Welcome back, everyone, to Film Music Focus. Today we're going to take a look at the concept of how military music works in film. I've got four examples set up for you all today. And let's start with one of my favorite Oliver Stone films of all time. The music to this particular film was composed by the great John Williams. And I'm speaking of JFK. There were a number of films that John Williams collaborated with Oliver Stone on. This one's my favorite by far. I love Born on the 4th of July, and Nixon's an incredible film as well, but this one's rather unique. And we're going to talk today just a little bit about some military implications, might be instrumental, that might be philosophical. But in this one, we'll start with the main title and the prologue, which many of you may already know. Excuse the very rudimentary electronic snare drum sound I'm going to play here for you. But right away, in beat one of bar one in the prologue and the main title, we get these great deep military tenor drums mixed with normal snare drums that kind of creates this percussion battery effect. So forgive the sample sound, but it starts off along the lines like this. That's quite bad, isn't it? Let's see if I can get a better tremolo in there. It's a little bit better. Well, you guys get the idea. So right away, we have this kind of tone that's set through the use of martial music given to you through these snare drums, these tenor drums. And while JFK was certainly not a military man, in fact, he did his best throughout his presidency to try and limit the amount of military engagement there was in his administration. However, he was surrounded by that, and I think perhaps that was one of the things that Oliver Stone and John Williams collectively kind of hinted at. Anyway, so this beautiful sound right from the very beginning, it comes from the snare drum. So let's have a listen to what the main title and the prologue kind of gives us here. Also, this very noble, beautiful trumpet solo that we have at the beginning. Played by the amazing Tim Morrison. And Tim Morrison was, many of you may know, was the principal trumpet player for the Boston Pops Orchestra for many years, whom was conducted by John Williams from 1980 to 1993. And so there was a great kind of history and tradition with them already. When Tim Morrison moved to Los Angeles, this is one of the film scores that he recorded for John. This beautiful kind of open fifth from E flat to B flat, and the horns will start, and then the trumpet solo. Something along that line. So let's have a listen to that beautiful trumpet solo, this kind of martial, instantaneous effect that we have in the snare drums, and we'll come back in a moment. Okay, the next sample we'll have a listen to, it's from the same film, from JFK, and this is the cue, Drummer's Salute. And for any of you that know a little bit about marching bands or military, traditional military music or military drums in general, you'll hear a lot of that tradition here. It's rooted in a number of different instruments. There's all kinds of beautiful percussion cadences here and paradiddles and the snare drums. And there's a lot more snare drums here than there are in the cue you just heard from the prologue main title. This is actually set with a lot of kind of outside marching snares and tenor drums, and you'll hear some of the tight bass drums here in this cue as well. This one, again, forgive the, the rudimentary electronic snare sample, but something along these lines. And then it goes on. You'll hear all those really great accents here in this cue. And I like this one for a lot of reasons musically, but why I like it primarily as far as the film is because it's set against this really incredible montage that Oliver Stone had edited here. And for any of you that kind of know the history of the art of montage in film, music has helped to serve as a very kind of linear solution to an otherwise very up and down, fragmented way of looking at something visually. So whereas you may have this and all these variances here happening visually, depending on how quickly the edit might happen, sometimes as slowly as maybe a Francis Ford Coppola or as quickly as a Paul Greengrass, is someone from the Bourne franchise. Music helps to kind of glue all this together. So I love how this percussion material glues this montage together in the film. So let's have a listen to this, the Drummer's Salute from JFK, composed by John Williams. If you haven't seen JFK, go see it. It's a long film. We have lots of time on our hands these days, being indoors and kind of social distancing, as we're calling it. But it also offers advantages and opportunities for us to kind of listen to things and do things we normally wouldn't do. So take 3.5 hours and go watch JFK. It's incredibly well made. I think it's one of Oliver Stone's masterpieces and certainly one of John Williams' greatest scores. So let's pivot to the next example. Let's take a look at the third film of the original Jack Ryan franchise. Of course, the first one was The Hunt for Red October, composed by the great Basil Polidorus, followed by Patriot Games and The Clear and Present Danger, both of which were composed by James Horner. The former, Patriot Games, was given a lot of Irish influence, and you hear some beautiful whistles and Irish percussion and some rather avant-garde kind of attempts through synthetic material and orchestral material colliding all in one. So, but in Clear and Present Danger, it's a very different beast. It's much more Americana. It's much more traditional as far as its orchestral scoring. And I love this score so much. One of my favorite cues from it, which we won't talk about in depth, but just so you have an opportunity to go listen to it if you haven't, is the ambush scene. It's not only a masterpiece from a directorial and editorial standpoint, but also from a musical standpoint by James Horner. So let's take a listen to something that James Horner didn't compose originally, but it was arranged for the film. And this is the tune from Dvorak's Largo Movement, the New World Symphony. And whereas that is originally set in D-flat, and this D-flat sample, this American mid-room size sample is a little bit on the flat side. This one is set in C, which is kind of an interesting choice of key just by itself because it's played by a brass band in the arrangement in the film. And so right away we have kind of this very bizarre choice, whereas D-flat, the original key that this tune was written in by Dvorak, furthest key away from that would be C, or perhaps D major, but going downwards to C is not a great key for a traditional brass band. When I say traditional, that which includes a horn in F and trumpet in B flat, Whereas you have your tubas and your trombones here in C in their natural key. That's all well and good, but D flat, ironically enough, would be a much better key, I think, for a traditional brass band to play in. However, this arrangement's in C, so we'll kind of take a look at what's happening here. But this scene, this is just after Jack Ryan has come back from the ambush and has returned back to Washington, D.C. He's coming off the plane to greet his beloved wife. And, of course, he has lost a number of colleagues of his, one of whom was FBI Director Jacobs, who was killed in the ambush. And so this scene here is a beautiful kind of reflection upon the loss of life. And it's a rather sad, morose scene, but this beautiful arrangement of this Dvorak tune, which, as I said here, is in C. But already we're kind of deviating from the traditional harmony, which was rather 1-4-5 augmented triad basic in the original. Already here, the C9 chord without the seventh. The third's in there in the original, in the arrangement in the film. So we have these ninth sounds, we have some sevenths, we have some sus 4/3s. It's a really beautiful sound. So in C again. See that sound there. Listen to the 6, the 2, you have your A here in the 6. You get a lot of this in the brass. So here's a little bit of what's happening here. That sus there. And here's your C triad augmented in the second position to D minor. And what's happening in the brass, you have a 4-3-2-3 suspension in C. Now we go to 4 chord here, we're in F, but right away, again, it's that F9 chord without the 7th. Here's your F major 7, which I think is just so beautiful in this arrangement. And I give back to F to the 9. F major 7. So these kinds of chords are so beautiful in brass when you get these rubs. Tonic to 7th, resolving. All these kind of collisions of sounds. Sometimes you get these E against F rubs. Sometimes you get these C against B rubs. Anyway, pay attention to this one as far as otherwise perhaps jazz-influenced voicings. You hear a lot of beautiful 7ths and 9ths and sus chords, and I think it's such a gorgeous arrangement. So have a listen to this. You may hear some dialogue and sound effects in this one. We're pulling this from the original audio, but it's so beautiful. And if you haven't seen this film, go see it as well. Clear and Present Danger, the music composed by James Horner.
Brought to you by Santa Concerts.